don't want to put anything in a pleading that is an argument that's beneath me. But I also want to add something. I'm lucky enough to practice with my brother, and he has a line that I live by, and it is, in the practice of law, under promise and over deliver. So that means don't promise the moon and the stars. So if you get more than you're expecting, the client will be happy. Trump does the exact opposite. He promises the sun, the moon, the stars, and the entire universe about everything, which is why he rules by executive order. When if they had, you know, there's an argument that with birthright citizenship, if he had done an executive order that said only temporary visa holders or people here unlawfully, it might have been a closer case. But because it was such a, as my understanding, it was such a wide reaching order trying to overturn the 14th Amendment by executive order, the court just didn't have an out to go with. So they issued a much broader decision. And in fact, the Wall Street Journal criticized Trump just for that, saying if you had had a limited order, you might have been able to do this. But no, you have to do it. You have to be the man. You have to do it like this. And if they had had a little more discipline, or if he had someone to tell him, actually, this is not calculated to succeed, we might actually get really bad precedent out of this. And he's like, no, let's do it.
So let's stop on that for a minute, because that is a great example of one of the things that were to be discussed by the president on our Constitution, on one of the amendments. And so can you just talk a little more about that, about this administration, and then the lawyers who are committed to protecting the Constitution? Because that's a great example of that very tension. And I have to be honest with you that because he's attacking our Constitution. And I don't understand, as a lawyer, I don't even understand how he can live with himself for doing that. But let's not talk about, I mean, that's just like one guy. But if you could talk more broadly about that tension of this administration attacking our law. I mean, laws are one thing because they are passed by the Congress and they are open to being changed. But an administration that is literally attacking our very Constitution, and then the lawyers who have to A, defend the Constitution, but also B, who have to somehow support the attack on the Constitution. I mean, have you ever thought about being one of those lawyers? I don't mean have you ever entertained applying, but have you tried to put yourself in the mindset of one of those lawyers? And as a practicing lawyer yourself in the trenches, what does that even look like?
I I think a lot of people like to comfort themselves with this idea that these lawyers are tortured. They're like, "Oh, what do I do? What do I do?" When the reality is probably worse, which is just they want to do this. They I don't think a lot of I think the ones that are left are the yes men, are the people who are happy to do this, are the people who were a strict constructionist on Tuesday and then a loose constructionist on Wednesday, depending on what the case is. And when I refer to loose constructionism, what I'm referring to is their conservatives for years have criticized, the more liberal interpretation to say, oh, the Constitution is living and we have to adapt to changing things. And they're like, I hate all of this. It has to be, it's whatever they said at the time, that's what it means. And then with the 14th Amendment, they were very much like, there's this great exchange where a lawyer for the government was saying, well, the Constitution, they never considered all these illegals coming into the country. And then Roberts retorts, yes, but it's the same Constitution, isn't it? Saying that, like, that's not my problem. That sounds like a policy solution. If you don't like it, you should do something about it. And I think what was so concerning to me about the birthright citizenship case is now, another thing I was told by a pithy law professor was, for all of the pomp and circumstance and all the, prestige we give to the Supreme Court, the law is what five people in robes say it is.